With me for our talk today, a bit of background quickly. My name is Maruf Ahmed. I'm the Global Director of Technology and Services at OneWorld InfoTech. And with me, I have our CEO from Smokescreen, my colleague, Sai Hidatullah.
Hi, Maruf. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining, Sahir. And obviously, we have a great session today. And with that, what will Sahir, a bit of background with Sahir is that he has been obviously the CEO of Smokescreen, and also his training has been in deception technologies, and training has been very renowned in the Black Hat USA.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for having me, and we're looking forward to getting a good session going today. So we're going to talk to you about deception technology, and specifically how it can help with protecting remote access networks such as VPN. Pretty much all of you, thanks to this global pandemic, would have been having your employees work from home. You might be setting up VPN systems, Citrix systems, and we've seen at Smokescreen a global increase in attacks against these systems. So the idea today is to try to show you what sort of stuff you can do to protect those systems using deception technology. So that's really where we're coming from. We'd like to keep the session somewhat interactive today. So there is a question and answer panel in GoToMeeting, which we urge you to use as much as you like. We'll try to take a good amount of time for questions at the end. So please feel free to make liberal use of the Q&A panel. And Maruf and I will walk through how deception can help you protect these networks, and talk to you about how OneWorld InfoTech and Smokescreen have partnered to bring this new capability to all of you in the market. So the broad agenda for today is we planned for 60 minutes. It's possible that we might end a little bit early, so we like to arrive before schedule. So the broad layout of today's session is going to be to start with the challenges of protecting a VPN-driven environment. So what are the things you have to worry about? Followed by what is deception technology? A lot of people have heard about it. You may know about honeypots, but what's sort of the state of the art? What are the benefits it can bring to you? After that, we're going to talk to you about a specific type of deception, which is known as perimeter deception. We'll explain how this works. It's a very interesting private threat intelligence capability. We'll then take the bulk of our time today to actually show you a demonstration of how a VPN or remote access environment would be targeted. And this will be through a live demonstration, assuming that all the demos work flawlessly, which so far I've been having a good last couple of weeks. I hope that they continue. So with my good luck, we hope that that'll be the case. If not, my apologies. And we'll finally go to takeaways and Q&A. So it's a pretty crisp session. And without further ado, Maruf, if any thoughts on your side, or should we jump right into it?
Sure. I mean, thank you, Said. I think the very first thing is, as in the agenda, is, of course, we all understand the challenge of protecting the VPN is that everybody's feeling at this current perspective. As we start, we talk with many CISOs and CIOs in different geographic regions that VPN is absolutely has become the backbone of today's business, especially providing remote activities support for our remote employees. And in this case, now this of course has raised a lot of challenges as we have started to see, given the increase in remote work due to the pandemic perspective. That we also get to see, even in US, Homeland Security has been urging organizations to adopt heightened best practice cybersecurity and related to VPN. Because at the same time, as organizations are using VPN for telework, more vulnerabilities are being found and targeted by malicious cyber actors. And also we get to see that since VPNs are 24/7, organizations are less likely to keep them updated with the latest security updates and patches. And with this, there are a lot of challenges our organization, as we get to see, is facing, and a lot of recommendations. And with this, absolutely, as we all understand, and is that almost every cyber attack, Sahir, use some form of deception to deceive users. And hopefully with today's session, that we would get to show the users that how deception technologies can help them for detecting VPN attacks, which is right now is a very high risk. Over to you, sir.
And to that point, there are three broad categories of attacks that we have been seeing against remote access environments. The first is obviously credential stuffing. This is where there may have been a breach of credentials on another site. They may be traded in the dark web. Your employees may get phished. And then when the bad guys get hold of a set of credentials, the first thing they want to do is they want to find a place to use them. So they go looking for entry points to your network. A VPN is a great place to start. A Citrix system is a great place to start. So they try to use these credentials, and you'll probably, if you track this, you'll probably see an uptick in these attempts on your perimeter. So that's attack vector one that we've been seeing. We've seen a 25%, I think, increase in those attacks in the last 3 months. The second attack vector that you have is attacks against the actual solutions that you're using. So there have been recent vulnerabilities in Citrix. There have been recent vulnerabilities in, for example, Pulse Secure VPN and a number of other VPN solutions. And right now, because the VPN is the drawbridge to your castle, there's probably a lot of folks poking around at all the best of breed VPN technologies that you have in order to find software vulnerabilities which they can exploit. And the third piece is what happens when somebody is connected over the VPN and I don't exploit the VPN, but I've exploited that endpoint. Now, your network just extended into the home of your, every employee. So if you have 5,000 employees, you just suddenly got 5,000 network segments with Wi-Fi access, with Amazon Echo devices, smart weighing scales, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the three major issues that we're seeing. And we're going to talk to you about how deception can help you with two today. And the third one, which is how you can protect your employee endpoint environments at a host level, is something we can briefly touch on as well. So I'm going to get into what deception technology is. And you're all probably seeing a bunch of black and white rocks on the screen. If you look carefully, you'll probably notice that there's a soldier hiding behind those rocks pointing a rifle at you. And if you didn't see it at first, don't worry. It was designed to make life difficult for you. It's not your eyesight that's a problem. Now, here's the thing. When we started with Smokescreen, the entire founding team comes from a red teaming background. And we said that most of the solutions on the defensive side are very reactive. We have to wait for alerts to come in. They don't really work to make the bad guy's life difficult. So what deception does is it makes the network hostile and unpredictable for the bad guy. In other words, we are going to use every dirty trick in the book to make their life difficult. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Your network is going to look like a easy, normal network to breach like they're used to. But actually, under the hood, it's going to have lots of little tricks that are going to give him away. If any of you have ever watched the old movie Home Alone, this is sort of what we're going to be trying to do, right? So let me explain in some depth how deception actually works. Let's look at the anatomy of a typical attack. We've got, this safe in one corner, which has, something confidential you want to preserve. And we've got a bad guy here at the bottom of the screen. Now, we've already put in place some defenses. We've put in place maybe some firewalls. We've got in place some CCTVs, like intrusion detection systems. And we've got a SOC or a monitoring team that's actually monitoring 24/7. So when you look at this scenario, it looks, okay, pretty good. But if you think like the bad guy and you apply your mind, you'll find that there might be pathways, because you can see and predict what defenses are there. You can find pathways which can be exploited to actually get to the safe without the detection systems actually catching you. So this is a big problem. And this is what happens every day. So how does deception change this situation? In deception, the situation is slightly different. There are suddenly going to be multiple safes, multiple pots of gold, multiple things which the bad guy can go after. Only one of them is real. The rest are decoys or traps or honeypots or lures or bait or whatever you want to call it, right? Now, if I ask you as the bad guy, you now have to attack this environment. And if you touch the wrong system or the wrong safe, you're going to get caught. What will you do? I'll make life a little bit easier for you. I'll remove all the other security technologies and capabilities. So if you look at this now, probably you'll realize that there isn't really a good move for you, because you're not sure if going after safe number 1 or number 2 or number 3 is the correct approach. This is what deception does. We shift the cost, that's the economic, time, and cognitive cost of the attack, onto the bad guy. and that makes his life difficult while making our life very easy. Of course, there are multiple ways we do this. We make sure that the real safe is in such a position that the bad guy has to encounter the deception before he actually sees the real pots of code, right? So this is typically how deception works. The idea is to place deceptive assets at scale on your network. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what's very topical, which is perimeter deception. In other words, right now, as you and I speak, your perimeter is being attacked by numerous people. Let's say there are 100 people right now who are attacking your perimeter. They're hitting your firewalls, they're hitting your web application firewall, they're hitting your IPS, and actually you don't really know who they are, because out of those 100, maybe 5 of them are doing a targeted attack against you. They know who you are. You're a bank, you're a stock exchange, you're a government institution, and they want to break into you. But for you, all 100 are the same. So you don't really know which ones to focus on, right? What we're going to do with deception is we're going to say which ones of those 100 actually are targeting you, what are they trying to do, and this threat intelligence is going to inform your defense. So in the demo that I'm going to show you, I'm going to do this for VPN and remote access systems. We're going to look at stolen credential attacks, and this intelligence that you get is hyper-local threat intelligence to you. In other words, most threat intelligence is only relevant, it's something bad that happened to someone somewhere at some point in time. Okay, and while that's useful, wouldn't you sort of much rather know what someone is trying to do to you today, right? So that's what we're going to try to do with this private threat intelligence deception capability. Okay, so let's talk a bit about how it works. Here's the setup. You've got our bad guy, and you have your infrastructure. So you've got your real assets, and you've got a set of internet-facing decoys, which we are going to place. So the yellow stuff are internet-facing decoys, and the animation moved a bit fast, but the white stuff is your real assets, and we've interspersed it with yellow decoys. And the bad guy scanned your environment, your perimeter, and he's got a few targets. He's found 5 targets which he's interested in. Now, when he starts actually trying to attack these targets, he's going to go after them. He's going to try to enumerate them, footprint them, try to get some reconnaissance data about them. And what's going to happen is he's going to hit these decoys, and a high confidence alert is going to go to your SOC and your SIM. This alert is very low false positive. So there is really no idea of a false positive. The fact that a hacker is trying to hit a decoy by definition is worthy of investigation. This is really powerful because your security team does not waste time on false positives. If you were to ask yourself, what is the cost of a false positive? Do you know how to calculate that cost today? Because every time your team chases down a false positive, they are spending time and spending money and spending effort. So every false positive you have is a cost. If we can reduce the false positives in your network and your threat detection, that actually improves your return on investment on your security stack. So let's go into how this happens. Before we get to the demo, we're actually launching, for the region, thanks to OneWorld, we're taking this to essential services in Bangladesh for free for some duration, where we will give whatever we're showing you today will be available for essential services directly at no cost, no obligation. Use it. We would like to help you while you're currently facing security threats. We would like to do our part to kind of help. So please feel free at the end of this webinar to write to Maruf's team. They have a separate email address called pandemicsupport@OneWorld InfoTech, or if you have an account representative, please reach out to them and we will arrange for this to be set up for you. And it's also very quick, so you can go live. We've done this in 60 minutes. So in 1 hour, you could actually get this up and running, whatever we're going to show you today. So,
thank you, Sahir.
Maruf, any thoughts? Yeah.
No, thank you, Sahir. I mean, for 13 years and counting, OneWorld InfoTech has been serving this market in Bangladesh with innovative technologies. And it has been an absolute pleasure for us to partner with Smokescreen. And it's a great initiative that we have taken in collaboration with Smokescreen to hopefully to help the customers and in the essential services industries. So thank you, Sahir, for enabling us to offer this to customers in Bangladesh.
It's our pleasure, Maruf. I would request that folks sign up quickly because this campaign we're trying to run in other regions around the world as well to support our customers in other parts of the world. So we don't actually have a hard limit on how many of these setups we can give out for free. It does actually run at a cost to us, but we're trying to give as many as possible. But the earlier you get in, the faster we can get it set up for you, and the less likely it is that we'll run out of the ability to provide these to the world in general. So I'll jump right into a demonstration of what private threat intelligence looks like. So the way we're going to do this is I have a setup here. This is the Smokescreen Illusion Black dashboard. This is set up currently live, running live on the internet, and we have a bunch of decoys live on the internet. In this case, I have got a decoy company for this demo called Choice Corp, and we are going to attack Choice Corp today on the internet. So I have set up some decoys on unused subdomains of Choice Corp. So I've set up a Citrix decoy, I've set up an SSL VPN decoy, I've got a remote access decoy, a gateway, and some others, right? So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to try to show you what an attacker will see, try to show you what the defender will see as well. So this is the console. We're going to keep coming back here. And to start with, I'm going to show you how to enumerate your environment. I'll do this live. I'm actually going to run a DNS reconnaissance, in this case against Apple. I'm just picking Apple, so don't worry, I'm not going to jail. This could be done by any of you. I'm going to do subdomain enumeration. So I'm going to try to find what does Apple have out there on the internet, because I don't want to attack apple.com. That's a pretty bad idea. But maybe Apple has forgotten some stuff. So let's do that. This is one way we can do it. And while this subdomain enumeration is running, I'm also going to go over to crt.sh. This is a way where you can do SSL certificate transparency searches, which is basically every time you guys provision an SSL certificate for a server, it's actually registered and publicly available. Very often you may do this for a UAT or testbed system before it goes live, and hackers can find out about it. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to do, let's say, FBI.gov, and let's see what's out there. So this is what the FBI is running right now. Some interesting stuff. Portal NDCAC sounds interesting. I have no idea what bankrobbers.fbi is. That sounds interesting. API, that might be something I want to target. ADFS, Active Directory, Federation Services, very common attack vector. Connect could be a VPN system. Login, HQCS, some very interesting named systems over here that I may want to actually go and target. So you can imagine if you were a bad guy, and I urge you, go to crt.sh, try this for yourself and see what you find. This is exactly what we do as bad guys when we try to find out what's actually out there. And we start looking around to actually identify the attack surface. Once we find that attack surface, oh, this looks interesting. Scribe dev might be a development system, unpatched, not ready for production. So this is how we would actually go targeting stuff. I'll go back to the Apple results. So you can see our enumeration has worked here. What do we have? Let's see if we see anything interesting here. Mobility could be interesting. That could be one. I have no idea what Tango and Nimbus, maybe this is a cloud. Deploy, very interesting, maybe a DevOps system. And you can see, I mean, Apple has a ton of stuff out there, right? So there might be stuff that I want to go after on this. I have no idea what ninja.apple is, but you get the point, right? So this is what attackers would do. Let me run the same thing now that I've shown you for Choice Corp. So I'm going to actually run this for Choice Corp. And we can see Choice Corp seems to have a lot of interesting stuff as well. It's running both IPv6 and IPv4. And we can see UAT, VPN, SSL, VPN, admin, Citrix, very interesting systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go check out some of these. Let's go pick up sslvpn.choicecorp.net. Connect to it. And if any of you have your browser open, please feel free to connect to it yourselves. Interesting. Looks like an F5 VPN. Now, this is actually a decoy system. You'll see immediately in real time, I switched over to our dashboard. I'm sitting right now in Mumbai, so that's why it's geolocated me to India. You can see a live connection to sslvpn.choicecorp.net. because this is a decoy. Now remember, this system is running live on the internet. It's being scanned as we speak, but it's not raising alerts, because only when somebody comes looking for the SSL VPN, only then does the decoy engage, because it knows it's a targeted attack. If any of you have your browser, you can try some of these others. I'll open a few more just to give you a sense. So let's go to citrix.choicecorp.net. And by the way, Citrix NetScaler ADCs have a vulnerability. If you've not patched this, please drop off this webinar and go patch that. You can see these look like interesting portals. So maybe I'll try some attack here. Maybe I've stolen an admin password, and maybe I'm trying some SQL injection. Maybe I do 1 or 1 equal to 1. This is F5's, really, really lousy virtual keyboard. So I'm just going to type in something. I'm going to submit that. Couldn't log in. Maybe I try something else. So this could be some way that I can try to attack the system, right? But obviously, I'm not going to go all the way into attacking it, but these are different ways I would try to attack it. Let's take another example. So Citrix has a vulnerability. Let's go actually see if we can exploit that. So I'm going to actually try to run that Citrix vulnerability to get the SMB config file. This is a recent vulnerability in Citrix systems. So I'm going to run that. Didn't seem to exploit, but we've tried. Okay, fair enough. Let's go over to our dashboard. We can see immediately Illusion Black, the deception platform, is detecting these targeted threats. So I know that our bad guy is doing something. Now let's see how quickly we can analyze. This is a real-time detection. You could get a text SMS. You could get an automated phone call. This could go to your SIM solution. But let's go analyze. So with one click, I can see a dynamic risk score. I can see attempted login. I tried a directory traversal attack, which was that Citrix attack. It's also identified the Citrix attack, and it's seen this is recon activity. Now, we've built a system to make it very easy for your analysts to analyze, because we found a lot of analysts don't have knowledge about, for example, they may not know about this Citrix attack. So with 2 clicks, I clicked once, second click, immediate description, examples of APT actors we've seen that do this. If you use MITRE attack mapping, we map to MITRE framework, and you can see it's even pulled out the necessary fields and the password that I typed in here. Similarly, we could see the Citrix attack. We can see that I used curl version 7.6.4, and we can go right down to the raw log details. So I mean, if you really want to go into it, you can go right down to the packet level. You can understand everything about this request. I'm on Mac OS, so you can see that's what it's found out here. And there's a lot of stuff you can do, but the most important thing is you are detecting a threat that is running live on the internet, which has your name. This is not a random attack. If there's a random attack against these IP addresses, you will not see an alert. XYZ, and somebody attacks specifically XYZ, only then will these decoys actually raise an alert. Now, this is great. We've detected something. What can we do? So I would urge you all to spin this up immediately, because we did a bit of a study, and I'll have Maruf send this white paper out to all of you. This was basically, we analyzed about 500,000 attacks against our platform, and we looked at in the last 3 months. So understanding what's changed in the work from home world. And this is what we actually saw. So across 500,000 odd attacks in the last 3 months, 50% of the attacks are currently against VPN and webmail systems. So that's very important. The people are specifically going after these systems. If you don't have visibility here, there's a strong chance you won't know what they're attacking, you don't know what their intent is, and you won't know how to block them. We've also seen an increase in perimeter-driven attacks. 62% of these attacks are originating from cloud hosting providers. This makes your life very difficult, because you can't just block AWS, GCP, and Azure. You can't just block the entire IP ranges. It's not a good idea for business, right? And most importantly, if you are using traditional threat intelligence feeds, only 50% of the attacks that we have seen in the last 3 months are from already known bad sources, which means you're consuming a threat intelligence feed thinking this will block all the known bad stuff. But half of the attackers are using new infrastructure, which has never been seen before. So that means half the attacks you're just not going to know, right? And this paper goes into details about how you can actually use deception to protect your environment, both on the perimeter, both in your data center and in your employees' home network as well. So I'll have this shared over. But let's come back over to our Defender system, and let's try to understand what other options we have. So we believe that you need to move 3 metrics to improve your security program. They're known as MTTD, mean time to detect, MTTK, mean time to know, and MTTR, mean time to respond. So mean time to detect is how fast you detect something. Mean time to know is how fast you root cause analyze it. And mean time to respond is how quickly can you remediate it. And the golden numbers which you should probably try to go for is detect in 1 minute, know in 10 minutes, and respond in 60 minutes. If you can do this, you're best of breed in the world, okay? Detect in 1 minute, know in 10 minutes, respond in 60 minutes. Now, you may not be there, you may not even be tracking these numbers, but I recommend you do. So our detection, let's look at it here. Mean time to detect was instantaneous. Mean time to know with the threat parse system, we can analyze this attack, maybe in 10 minutes, we can understand what this guy is doing. Let's talk about mean time to respond. So in Smokescreen, you get 2 options for response. Is that you can contain the integrations that we have. So if I just say contain, this attacker is now cut off from my infrastructure. No matter what he does, he'll have to change his IP, and I don't even have to block him by IP. I can block him by IOC or indicator of compromise. So I can make his life very difficult, right? You can quarantine him. For those of you who are into orchestration, security orchestration and response, the platform has an orchestration capability, and we can even include orchestration rules. So I can say, out of office hours, for example, and I can say decoy name is maybe VPN, and maybe timestamp after 5 p.m. So maybe we are all not monitoring after 5 p.m. And I could put something else, maybe the username he submits is Maruf. So Maruf got hacked after 5 p.m. Now I could save this rule, and I could now say, make a phone call, text message, email alert. So the CISO can get an alert, the security team can get an alert, forward it over to a SIM platform, respond automatically. So if I save these rules, this is actually, the second this attacker does this, the system is going to automatically quarantine the attack. And this is amazing. Who want to do security orchestration are unable to do so because of false positives. Imagine if you receive an alert and that alert requires a human being to analyze it, you cannot orchestrate, you cannot do API-driven automated response. But if the alert is 100% false positive free, then you can orchestrate the response. So this is where deception allows you to immediately, in the next 1 hour, start cutting bad guys off from your network. And this is really, really easy to do. As I said, after this, if you were to sign up for this, we could get you going in a couple of hours and just have this deployed. You'll start detecting threats against your infrastructure and cutting bad guys off from your network. And currently for essential services, you can do this free. So honestly, there's no good reason for you not to do this. You should already be drafting an email to Maruf. But that being said, this is just one feature of deception. The whole idea of deception is we protect your perimeter and we protect your external environment your internal environment as well. So we have capabilities to deploy deception, not just on the perimeter, in your internal network. So we can create decoy Swift servers, we can create decoy ATMs, core banking machines, IT security systems, pretty much any device you see. We can do SCADA and industrial control systems. We can do Active Directory deception. We can do man-in-the-middle detection. If you use AWS or Azure Cloud, we can do deception there. And even on your endpoint, we can create all sorts of very interesting deception. So if somebody breaks into an endpoint, we can actually show him little breadcrumbs, fake files, fake cookies, fake passwords. And if he touches or uses any of these, immediately we get an alert. So if you break into my laptop, for example, and you go through my files or you try to extract my credentials, you may see 20, 30 credentials, hundreds of files. You don't know which are real and fake. If you touch the wrong one, my security team is going to know immediately. So deception is much broader than just perimeter deception, but this is really the easiest piece you can do. And if I had to sum up, there are lots of ways you can do threat detection. The great thing about deception is it's a solution for complexity. At Smokescreen, we believe that security solutions have become too complex, too much to manage, too many dashboards, and security teams are already overburdened. What we want to give them is, based on our red team knowledge, simple solutions that they can implement fast at a decent price, and they can get going immediately, not run a 2-year-long project and then see the results later. So that's really the goal of Smokescreen and the goal of our deception technology. I'll take a quick breather here. I see we've got a fair number of questions. Maruf, maybe you can walk us through some of those questions, or maybe you can contextualize this for the Bangladesh market.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sahir. I think absolutely what Sahir has mentioned, VPN is currently absolutely should be considered as a critical attack vector in your threat map and your ongoing security monitoring perspective. Because unlike any security or patch management team who may be struggling to patch your VPN, the mainstream hackers are targeting VPN regularly. So even if we think about recent attacks and are also recent advisories that the US National Security Agency has released, that pointing out that advanced persistent threat, APT actors are actively exploiting VPN vulnerabilities. And at that point of time, that they were referring to some of the large vendors that basically hackers adversary has found vulnerabilities, VPN vulnerabilities. Now, in this perspective, as even when VPNs are placed in securely in enterprise DMZ, they sometimes go virtually unnoticed or unmonitored by many security operations centers. So definitely, as Sahir has mentioned and shown us today, is that VPN is a very critical attack vector right now, especially when organizations are struggling to provide the VPN access to remote workers. And as we are having this session, a few questions has come up, Sahir. So let me get to those questions.
Sure. And for those of you who have a SOC, this is a very nice dashboard because it doesn't just show you random things. When something lights up over here, it means that there's a problem. So it's a very useful dashboard. Most of my customers have this on a nice big screen in their SOC. Not just does it look very pretty, but it's very useful because if you see something light up here, it means it's a targeted attack of some kind.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Maru, over to you for questions.
Thank you. So the questions, we got a few questions, Sahir, so it seems like we're going to be having some great discussion. The very first question has come up is that, can you share some specific examples of attacks that your banking customers that have detected?
Yes, I can. I obviously won't name the customer. I'll give a few examples. There was a bank which was, so this was an interesting one. This was about a year ago. I think it was a bit more than a year ago. It was a bank which had actually just had a Swift hack. I think at that time, something like $40 million had been total transferred out. They recovered some amount. And the problem was the bank called us after the hack had actually happened, and they had no visibility. And obviously, their security operations team was worried about how would they find out if the bad guy was currently still in the network, where were they moving laterally, what privilege escalation were they doing. They didn't know, and they were in incident response mode, so they needed to figure it out in hours, not days or weeks or months. And so they said, we can't configure devices, put them in the SIM, build use cases, do analytics, do UEBA, do EDR. You can't do that. That's going to take too long. So we deployed the solution in an afternoon, I think, across the bank. And once we did that, immediately we started detecting lateral movement. We created decoy Swift servers. We created decoy core banking systems. We created decoy transaction processing systems. And immediately we started seeing the lateral movement within the network. So they went from 0 to full lateral movement visibility in a matter of an afternoon, right? So that's one example. Another good example was we had a very large financial institution in the US, and we had this perimeter deception deployed for them. Now, this particular organization, their marketing team uses WordPress, the CMS content management system, a lot. So what we found, we had actually created some decoys for WordPress. And what we found is within minutes of a new WordPress vulnerability being announced, a particular attack group out of Eastern Europe immediately started scanning, just like I did over here, started scanning this particular financial institution to find whether their WordPress had been patched. Now imagine being patched, in minutes is almost impossible. But these guys didn't know this. They had no idea. But because we had those WordPress decoys, they immediately lit up in real time and showed us. And we saw this attack pattern over multiple months. So then they completely changed their defensive strategy. One, they made the marketing team reduce the WordPress sites. Two, they prioritized the patching of WordPress assets in production. And three, they were able to monitor all the IOCs of this threat group because they didn't even know this group was targeting them. They were able to keep track of this particular attack group. So this is why we call it private threat intelligence. If you want to go from consuming somebody else's threat intelligence, that means somebody else is being robbed somewhere else in the world, to who's trying to rob you, this is a very powerful capability. These are two examples from banking and finance. I'll give another one, which, so those were more targeted attacks. I'll give another interesting one. When the WannaCry ransomware happened a few years ago, another very large bank, which has about, I think, 5,000 branches, they had our solution deployed. Now, we didn't know anything about WannaCry. It wasn't even in the news that it was WannaCry. But what happened was, some infected systems in their network started sending malicious SMB traffic to the decoys. Nobody knew what it was, but because they saw it, they said, why is something talking to our decoys? They immediately quarantined those 5 or 6 machines. And then 3 hours later, it's in the news that WannaCry is a global outbreak for ransomware. And the chief security officer called me and he told me, Sahir, in 5 minutes, I got 5 years worth of ROI from your technology, because you were able to detect something which otherwise was completely under the radar for me. And because I know that nothing should ever hit my decoy, the second it hit my decoy, I took a proactive action to quarantine it, and that saved my entire branch and banking network. So these are 3 examples, Maruf, that come to mind.
Okay, fantastic. So I think thank you, Sahir, for sharing those examples. I think it will be definitely helpful for the audience who has actually also given some questions.
Because you cannot have a deception that lasts forever. For example, in my Swift decoy, it's a high interaction decoy. You can go, you can type your Swift routing number, but if I press transfer money 50 times and I don't get money in Macau, at some point I'm going to realize it's a fake. But by that time, look at how much of an advantage the defender has got. So yes, our decoys, one, they detect attempts to fingerprint. So if you try to fingerprint the decoy, it will raise a very high severity alert to the security team. And two, it's impossible for you to engage the decoy and not be detected. How long we keep you engaged is a matter of your deception strategy. And usually the security team, we help them configure their response so that they get the alert in real time. So the minute you know that the guy is there, you already have the advantage on him. Excellent question.
Well, fantastic answer, Sahir. Well, I got another question that came from audience. Is that I think this just came in from as part of your follow-up question. Is that how many decoys are needed for detection to be effective?
So usually you don't need to think in terms of numbers of decoys. What you need to think in terms of is maybe use cases. So take perimeter threat intelligence, for example. Usually 10 perimeter decoys for a reasonably sized organization is sufficient. Obviously, if you're Apple and you have 5,000 public assets on the internet, you're going to put more decoys, right? More decoys doesn't necessarily mean more effective. I'll give you a very good example of this. I have a customer that's a law firm. They deal with almost every pharma merger and acquisition transaction in the world. So billions of dollars of mergers and acquisitions. So they're a huge target. Now, they have only one decoy. It's a file server decoy. And they make it look like it's full of pharmaceutical M&A information, right? That one decoy is super effective for them because they know that if an attacker attacks them, that is going to be the pot of gold. So when we create a deception strategy for you, we do it on 2 lines. The first line is, what visibility do you want? So for example, we will take the MITRE attack matrix and we'll say, which techniques can you detect today? Maybe you can detect 20 of them. So we'll say, okay, with deception, we can now detect 40. So we will create a number of decoys based on that, that visibility that you want. That's step 1. Step 2, you analyze your business risks. Have you launched a new product? will attackers want that? Which are the 3 systems that if you I often ask CISOs to do this exercise. You get woken up in the middle of the night and it's your security SOC guy saying, sir, we've been hacked. What are the first 3 systems that you're worried about? Okay, which come to your mind that you will ask him, is this safe, is that safe, and is the third thing safe? Those 3 systems, start with deception for those 3. I have customers who range from 1 decoy to hundreds of decoys, thousands of decoys. So the platform supports all of them, but the way you should think about it is not by number, but by what the attacker will choose or want to attack. In a typical network, if you've got 10,000 systems, as a bad guy, I don't attack 10,000. I'm looking for something specific. So the one downside of deception is that you want to think a little bit about where you deploy it. Of course, Smokescreen and OneWorld help with your deception strategy, so we'll help you get it right. And the nice thing about it is you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to, like EDR, you have to deploy it everywhere to be effective. You can deploy deception for one use case, try it out, then move it out to other use cases as well. So numbers of decoys is less relevant. It's more important that you think about where you're placing it.
Thank you, Sahir. So we got another question come up is about the deception strategy for SOC. I see the question, perhaps the question has come up because many banks are considering already have SOC in some form, and at the same time, many organizations are investing in a security operations center. So the question I see in the audience has come up is that how deception should play in the SOC scenario. And so before Sahir, you jump in, I mean, to me is, of course, from today's perspective, the SOC should be very familiar with the VPNs, and especially it is now high attack vector, and should model the response plan for the scenarios such as VPN compromise. And with this, Sahir, over to you to share your thoughts how deception and SOC should play in the roles in today's current perspective.
I would put it a couple of ways, Maruf. The first is typically every SOC that we are integrated with, we are designed to make the SOC more efficient and effective. Okay, we actually have a white paper on this, SOC effectiveness with deception. We can forward that or provide a link to that as well. Here's what we do. Typically, we'll integrate with the SOC, and that'll come in, it'll be correlated as an event. The SOC team is told that if you see an alert from the honeypot, from the decoy, immediately correlate that with other information. Let's take this VPN example. Supposing you saw IP address X is attacking the decoy VPN. On the SOC, immediately just correlate where else is IP address X attacking. So go correlate with your firewall log, your intrusion prevention log. Go look at your proxy and see whether there's outbound traffic to that IP. Maybe the guy got in somewhere and you're seeing a command and control. So step 1, the deception alert is the alert that clarifies all your warm alerts in your SOC. The alerts where you're not sure, the second you see a deception correlation, immediately you know you should be sure. That's part 1. Part 2, most people don't realize the dollar value cost of false positives. If you were to think about, say you spend $1 million on a cybersecurity solution, and maybe it's generating 100,000 alerts, and 5% of those alerts are the only real alerts, you're going to come to some dollar value of the cost of those false positives, right? So maybe it's $40 per alert, right? What deception will do is it will actually reduce that cost, okay? Because your people are spending time. And we help customers with this calculation because many of them have never done it before. And when they suddenly look at it, they say, my God, I'm spending $400,000 is just wasted time. And every CISO that I talk to says, I have limited budget, I have limited teams. And then when I show them how much of their team's time is being wasted on false positives, they realize that there's a great case for deception to make the SOC more efficient. So we move the SOC towards automation, towards orchestration, less human involvement, much better focus. I don't believe security is a big data problem. I believe it's a good data problem. And we help the SOC get good data.
Thank you, Sahir. There's another question that has come up. What about when our deception techniques, strategies, or processes don't work as planned? Is there a possibility that the deception technology might actually create additional problems in long term?
So the good thing about deception is it's an out-of-band technology. It's not inline. So even if the deception system goes boom, there's firstly no impact to the networks. There's no performance issues that come in. We are deployed at the world's fastest stock exchange, and they were obviously very keen to evaluate and make sure that nothing actually can cause any performance impact. We're deployed at the world's largest oil refinery, so they also wanted to make sure that we're not going to make the plant go boom. So one is, deception does not cause a performance impact. At worst, say something were to happen to the deception system, you would just not get the alerts. That's the worst case scenario, right? That's point one. Point two, if your deception strategy is wrong, how do you figure it out? So one is, I believe a deception strategy is a continuously evolving thing. It depends on your business needs. It depends on what you're worried about protecting, what visibility you want. So usually, most of you would be doing some sort of penetration testing from time to time, maybe annually, maybe quarterly, biannually. What I would recommend is, next time you call your penetration testing team or your red team and you give them a flag to capture, supposing you've told them, hey guys, go break into the Swift server, okay? Make sure that you have your deception created for that scenario and then see whether they get caught. If they get caught, your deception is working. If they don't get caught, do a post-mortem analysis. What techniques did they use? How did they reach the real Swift server without detection? How can you place more deception in the right places? Maybe you put it in the wrong place. Maybe it wasn't attractive enough for them. So this way, you can keep evolving your blue team, red team practice, and you actually get genuine purple team capabilities in your security practice. So it is a constant evolution. And obviously, we keep creating new decoys, new types of decoys, new types of systems that you can put, which are in the network. So we keep giving you those updates as well.
That's done great, Sire. Sire, as you are now this as from the banking sector, financial sector, we see many organizations who have participated in this webinar today with us are coming from banking and financial organizations. And so as you are working with the different markets, what's your perspective, especially if you talk about India and perspective, financial and banking perspective, how deception is playing a role there in the RBI and other perspective?
This is a good question. So incidentally, the RBI cybersecurity guidelines to all Indian regulated entities mandates deception. It's written right there in the guidelines, the use of honeypots for the SOC. And it is something that the RBI actually audits. So when they go to the regulated entities, they actually find out, do you use deception? How are you using it? Where's that telemetry coming? There are other initiatives, not just in India, but in the US and I believe in Australia as well, where the regulators are requesting, if there's an attack or some incident, give us any alerts or IOCs that you have from the honeypots. And then what they try to do is they try to do regional threat intelligence sharing. This is something that Smokescreen has done very well in India. We have our Shadowhunter Global Insights program. And what we do is, I have maybe 35 banks in India alone. So I cover the subcontinent pretty decently for these type of attacks. When we see attacks in a few places, we inform the rest of the member base. So it's strength through numbers, right? Similarly, these initiatives from the regulators to deploy deception technology is very prominent. Gartner has called this a top 10 security technology 2 years in a row. So there's a lot of focus on actually deploying this. I would love if there are enough people from the financial services sector in Bangladesh who are interested in this. I would be quite happy to try and set up some sort of a threat intelligence sharing program, which is regional, hyper local specific. And if there's enough folks who are interested and will sign up to this, we could really create something amazing for the banking sector in Bangladesh.
This is fantastic, Sahir mentioned, because from our capacity, we have been in discussion with different bodies, because this is, as we have, from our perspective, as we work in multiple geographic region, as you also mentioned, that deception, there is an RBI or other regulatory authorities, they are looking into it as a guideline, as honeypot perspective. And even when we talk with CISO in different regions, is that whenever there is an attack, obviously when most of the organization are using SIM solutions in some fashion. So in the log management perspective, but when I've talked with CISOs in multiple countries, and one common theme that I have seen is that when they get an alert from a deception, that's not that's the alert that comes in the very top priority. And I think no wonder regulators are looking into it. So, and also what you mentioned, Sahir, I think that's an initiative we hope that we could together take for Bangladesh market and help the financial community.
And Maruf, a great starting point is, this, you're getting a free license. Anyone who's, banking is in essential services in our scope. So if there are any banks or financial institutions in the webinar today who think this is a useful thing, just start. Just contact us. There's no cost. We're not looking to, if you like the platform months later and you want to buy it and you want to do something with it, fine. But for the next few months, you can actually just get rolling with this. You can get the threat intelligence, and who knows what you might see. So if you catch something, look at the return that you're getting. And then if we get enough, we can publish a Global Insights report just for the Bangladesh region.
Absolutely. So sounds great. So, well, we're on the top of the hour. So would definitely like to thank you, Sahir. At the same time, thanks all the audience that who have participated with us today. We sure are here to help you, and would like to provide any assistance that we can, especially with the VPN perspective, as with the free license for the essential services that we are providing in collaboration with Smokescreen. With this, I would like to conclude our webinar session today. Thank you, everyone.